Evening, everybody. It is Monday, November 21st, 6:30 p.m., and we're here for a city council meeting. Going to start this off with roll call and determination of quorum.
Nordstrom.
Here.
Solomon. Roberts. Stroman. Armstrong. Jones.
Here.
Lehman.
Here.
Ham. Evans. Roseland. We have a quorum.
Next up is the invocation by Mr. Ron McLaughlin, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pray with me. Father God, first of all, we thank you and praise you, God, for this day, another day, and thank you, Lord. It says in your word that we are to give thanks in everything, for this is your will. And so, Lord, I'm thankful that we get to live where we live, in this country, in this city. And we thank you, God, that I thank you for these here that are lead and serve in the way that they do and their willingness to do so. I thank you for their first responders in the room, Lord, and those that serve the city, and we pray for their protection. I pray for everybody's wisdom, Lord, and discernment and direction, and in all of their discussion and all of their debate. And Lord, we'll just trust you with the results in Jesus' name. Amen.
Next up is the adoption of the agenda. Motion by Armstrong, second by Stroman. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Agenda is adopted. Item 1 tonight is an annual report presented by the Sustainability Committee. I'm not quite sure who's going to, looks like the whole group's here.
Good evening, council members, members of the departments from the city. Thank you for allowing us on your agenda this evening. Each year in the fall, we try to get on your agenda to report our activities because of our bylaws, but also allows us to show you what we've been up to, how we've been spending your money. Welcome to the new members of the council. We also have had some turnover on our committee. We have 12 members and 2 alternates. This year we have a turnover of 3, so we have 3 new members, and they're here this evening so that you can take a look at them. First one is Olivia Berger from Stevens High School. And there is Nicole Urbach and Stacy Grunham. You probably already know Stacy from her work with Visit Rapid City. Our committee this year has a broad range of backgrounds, all the way from bright young people like Olivia who are still in high school to not so young or bright like the guy that's standing in front of you. So, and everything in between. I've been with the committee now for about 7 years, and I've noticed over the years an increase in interest in sustainability by the community. And that's also kind of across the board. I've noticed it in student activities. This last meeting we had last week, we had 5 high school students attend. 2 were from the Youth City Council. 1 is a member that's here tonight. And 1 was a student with Black Hills State University. I've also noticed an uptick in interest from the business community. We do projects with some businesses when they ask, and some business organizations. We have interconnections with business organizations in Rapid City Visit and Elevate. And also with educational activities, we have a lot of work. We do a lot of work with South Dakota Mines and with Western Dakota Tech. More so this coming year, but so it's kind of across the board, and that is, I think, kind of a pulse of what's happening in the community. Another kind of a interesting fact is over the past 7 years, we maybe have one or two people on the wait list with their applications to become members of the committee. When we filled these last three, we had a waiting list 8 members long, and I think it's growing. So it's kind of a productive time for the Sustainability Committee, and I look forward to another great year. So I'm going to turn this over to our folks that are going to give these slides, the people that do all the work, and let you take a look at how they do. Thanks.
Hello, I am Olivia Berger from Stevens High School, and I am one of the newest members to the committee. And we will start our presentation by going over the agenda, which is what we will cover in our presentation. We'll start with our definition of sustainability, and to us, sustainability means meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. We focus on the 3 pillars of sustainability, which are people, profit, and planet, which are all factors in our decision making. And our current committee membership is made up of 14 members alongside a waiting list. You can see our current members and officers alongside our city liaisons, which we would like to thank today. Our city liaisons are Pat Rosalind and Callie Pearson. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Kathy Thrash. I'll do the next couple of slides here. I'll keep them brief. I joined the committee in August of 2020. I'm also doing the social media stuff as best I can, trying to get the word out about this committee and other issues that are facing us in the sustainability realm. So looking at our different subcommittees, we have 3 of them. The events, education, and outreach, I'm on that one, as well as several other members. We've kind of broken up into different categories here. We focus on the events and outreach, of course, you know, things like Earth Day, citywide cleanup, that kind of thing. There's the city facilities. They also have different, I think 5 or 6 members there. And then the sustainable development, again, subcommittee. I got to tell you, I got to participate in a lot more events this year. That's my mugshot there, a lot of photos. In the spring, we are quite busy, and it is a lot of fun. And one of my favorite things in the whole wide world now is to do the Scouts Merit Badge, the sustainability, to see these young kids doing this, and it's a requirement now to reach the Eagle Scout level, and it is so fascinating to, once they finally kind of chime in and get to going with, you know, it's a Saturday morning, they'd rather not be there, of course, but once they finally get going and we have good conversations, it's really a lot of fun. So that just brings a lot of joy to me. One of the other really good ones was, I didn't get to participate in this one, but the International Visitor Leadership, the program tour, that was with some officials from Central and South America. And it was at Western Dakota Tech, and they got to tour the aquaponics and the Echo Works, and it was with Black Hills Works, and I guess it was really interesting. The citywide cleanup is always a success. We work with RIA on that a lot, and some of the other photos there of the awards and of the tour there. The awards, Homegrown Goods and Black Hills Solar. We've been doing awards, several of them every year, and that's really good to point out those leaders in the sustainability world. What's the next one? Oh yeah, Earth Day. Again, super successful. That was really fun. Okay, and can I just say that food truck was the best? Okay, I think it was Ugly Graffiti. Oh my God, those like nachos I had to take a picture of because they were so good. Probably not the most healthy for sustainability, but man, they were good. So very popular. The weather was kind of cold and rainy that night, but it didn't hold people back. Very, again, hopeful to see the young kids doing the Hell on Earth documentary. That was the St. Thomas More students. Got to see that, got to see the 2040, and just, again, the booths and the success and just the milling around of people, and it was just very hopeful for me. The Trail Challenge was super popular this year. It's only our 2nd year we've done it, and it was probably twice as popular, so that was very good. We worked with the outdoor campus on that as well. So I'll turn it over to Lizanne.
Good evening, Council. Lisanne Zeller. Just really quickly, I want to touch on our Pollinator Week and advocacy. This year, we continued to support the Bee City USA designation and Mayor's Monarch Pledge. We did this with a Pollinator Week event at the Black Hills Farmers Market in June. We had the help of Tim Moran. He brought a box of bees to show folks in an observation box, and we also had the help of the Rapid City Garden Club there with us, and it was supported by Parks and Rec, but Melissa Peterson unfortunately had to miss this year. We also continued our second year with a pollinator garden at City Hall there. That's out by the flagpoles. And this year we expanded and added some new pollinator beds at Wilson Park. Something else that happened this year in support of this was the Rapid City Garden Club celebrated their 75th anniversary this year, and they did that by dedicating a bee garden at their Gardens at the Canyon Lake Activity Center. And I didn't know this until I attended that event, that was inspired by the city's Bee City USA designation. So it's interesting to see how that's trickling down into the community.
Hello, Patricia Scarborough here. One thing we also participated in was the Youth and Family Services, their annual Harvest Festival. They have a garden education program that's growing quickly and very successful, and so we were invited to be part of their Harvest Festival. So we had a table and tried to educate kids on sustainability and be part of that, which was very exciting. And you'll see we'll be presenting Youth and Family Services with one of our sustainability awards in December, so they're doing a lot of great stuff with their garden education program. We have several community partners, as you know, many of the city organizations, education. We partner with Western Dakota Tech and School of Mines and several local organizations that we've partnered with for several years. But we're especially excited about some new partnerships. We're working with Visit Rapid City. We've got Stacy Granum as one of our newest members, and they're working on a destination stewardship planning. So it's a pretty exciting thing that they're working on, and we're excited to be doing it with them. We're also working with Western Dakota Tech on their grant for sustainability education with our sister city of Apolda, Germany. So we'll be involved with that. There will be some exchange back and forth with Apolda, and we're very excited about that partnership. We are also very excited that Rapid City is choosing to be a leader in creating a sustainability coordinator program, as many of you have been a part of developing that and will continue to be a part of that. So Liz Ann will present a little bit more about that.
All right, I think this is a history most of you are familiar with, but just really quickly, as most of you know, our committee was formed in 2012, and since that time, we felt that there was a need for a sustainability coordinator at the city. This was a recommendation that was included as well in the 2014 Rapid City Comprehensive Plan. So it's something that our committee has talked about for a long time, but it wasn't until about 2 years ago that we started getting serious and doing a lot of research, educating ourselves. We spoke with sustainability coordinators in other cities from Iowa to Oklahoma, Colorado, et cetera, and we really felt that this position would benefit the city. So got a lot of this information together, continued working with our city council liaisons to kind of push this idea forward at the level of the mayor. And then this year we had the opportunity to present to the mayor as well as the Legal and Finance Committee at the end of August, early September about the need for this position. And thanks to the City Council, it was included in the budget for 2023 provisionally with the idea that a program and a plan for this position needs to be worked out first. All of you were invited to the sustainability retreat on October 12th. That was held where we did a bit of a strategic planning session to talk about the priorities for this position. What does this mean for the city? So thank you all who attended that and participated. Thank you to Leah Braun for facilitating that. Following that, we ran out of time at that retreat to really identify the priorities. We talked about them but didn't have a chance to prioritize them. And so a survey went out following that retreat that you all should have had an opportunity to participate in, and that asked you what your priorities were for the sustainability program. We'll talk about that more in just a minute. Other details are still being worked out, as we understand, by the mayor and city council and staff, and just want to let you know that we're here ready and willing to help with that. Looking forward to 2023, we are hopeful that this position will be created and anticipate that our role as a committee may evolve as a result of that. We're not planning to go away, but we're hoping it may evolve if we get a full-time sustainability coordinator at the city. In the meantime, we'll keep plugging away and working on our many initiatives throughout the community. As I just mentioned, that survey that went out after retreat helped to identify the priority or focus areas for this program in the left-hand column in red. These are the priorities that were identified in order. The survey asked you to choose your top 5. You'll notice that there's more than 5 there, and that's because the bottom 3, local and sustainable food supply, energy, sustainability, education, and outreach, all tied for 5th place. So those were the priorities that were identified. They all tie into the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Those are the 17 there that you see on the right. So we're really excited about this going forward and looking forward to continuing to work with you all and the city on this. Just quickly before I say thank you and answer any questions, we didn't list them as city liaisons, but I do want to thank our outgoing city liaison, which was Councilmember Armstrong this year. That transition happened over the summer. I want to thank Bill Evans. He continues to be a resource for us, so thank you. And also Daryl Shoemaker, because he is a big help to us and is always willing to help us, even at the last minute, so we really appreciate him and all that he does for our committee. With that, we thank you for the time, and our contact information is up there as well as our meeting information. Everyone is always welcome at our meetings. We appreciate your time tonight, and we'll stand by for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from my colleagues? Mr. Jones, please.
Thank you. I see you meet the 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month. Where do you meet?
So we flip-flop between in-person and Zoom. When we do meet in person, we're next door in the community room, but about every other meeting, we do Zoom. And everyone is still welcome to attend. We provide the link to the public to attend.
So the one a week from tonight, where will that one be? Will that be the flip or the flop?
That's up to our chair. We had a schedule and then we sort of flip-flopped, so Zoom next week, next Monday. Yeah.
So then will the following one be here?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Roseland?
I want to thank the Sustainability Committee for doing what they're doing. I've belonged to that for the last, well, since June as I got elected, and not knowing what I was getting into. But this is a very, very active group and has been active for all these years since 2012, obviously with different membership, but the leadership that's in this group now is outstanding. And I appreciate that I have a lot to learn from you guys, but I'll be there to support you in any way I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Yeah, I just want to comment, after a couple years on the committee, when I first started on the council, it's obvious to all of us that, excuse me, that have served on it, that you probably are the most effective community committee that we have, and if you had any power whatsoever, you'd probably be taking over the world. So I want to thank you for your hard work, and your presentations that you do are you know, they're conspicuously high in quality. I would like to note that for the next year and a half or more that or 2.5 years that I'm going to be on here, I'd like to work on some more of these projects, in particular dark skies, perhaps monarch, you know, butterfly areas in the city and things like that. But if you went outside during that snowstorm last week and you looked in the sky, it was like daylight out there. Now that is the result of excessive light being scattered everywhere, and it's kind of shocking how bright it was outside. I don't know how many of you noticed that, but it's pretty unacceptable, and it's not something that we have to tolerate, and I think we should start working on that right away, so to be more dark skies compatible. But thank you for your work. Thank you.
Mr. Stroman?
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the committee for its work too, and I have a question about, will the PowerPoint that you just put on, is that on your web page, or is that, we can refer to that at some point?
Sure, we will be happy to email it to all of you, a digital copy, but I will post it to our website tonight. Yes, rapidcitysustainability.com.
And I think, Mr. Jones, you'd agree this is a result of a sustained effort to get to this point, and I congratulate you for that.
Thanks, guys. Next up on the agenda is general public comment. It is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. And I do have a couple speakers tonight. First, we're going to start with Mr. Dan Tribby. Just so you know, sir, you have 3 minutes, traffic lights. When it's red, your time is up.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. Thank you, members of the council. I'm Dan Tribby from Prairie Edge. And I just want to talk a little bit tonight about the dispensaries downtown, or the potential for dispensaries downtown. And we worked on just really trying to improve downtown for the benefit of the businesses and the citizens of Rapid City, and we've worked on it for about 20 years, from the park and the promenade, Main Street Square, of course, renovating businesses. The fellow that I used to work for, Raymond, he bought Imperial Inn because it was a blighted property, and nothing good was taking place on that property. And we paid for things like the housing study, or paid for one of them, to just find out what the needs of Rapid City were going to be. And our total focus was, how do we make Rapid City, and how do we make downtown Rapid City especially that real jewel? And we put a lot of time and we put a lot of money into that investment. Fast forward till now, and medical marijuana gets legalized. The people who are working for recreational marijuana to be legalized, they said on November 8th, yeah, we lost this time, but we'll be back again. So it's not going away. But those investments that were made, not just by us, but people all over downtown, to build residential areas and then invite families and invite workers. The Legacy project, I believe there's going to be like 140 apartments and 12 retail space, but because of that retail space, they don't count as residents. So it doesn't matter. You can put a dispensary close to it because it just doesn't count as residents. I have a word for what I think that is, but I'm not going to share that with you. It would not be something positive. But I just think there's, Rapid City is a big area. There is certainly a lot of real estate around where people can put in dispensaries, and the people that I am working with, we are not opposed to dispensaries, but we would really, really appreciate consideration to keep dope out of downtown. We established that bid area, and we would like that at least considered. I know you have a lot of legal things that you have to look at, and we appreciate that, but a lot of us put a lot of time and money into making our businesses have a chance to succeed, in downtown Rapid to succeed. We just like the opportunity to be able to see that through and have our businesses so our employees can also have a good way of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tribby. Next up is Carolyn Mazzio.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hi, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Carolyn Mazzio, and I'm a resident and homeowner in Ward 5. I've requested this time for public comment because I'm concerned about crime in Rapid City. I'm not sure which aspect of crime is more concerning to me right now, whether it's the number of crimes, especially violent crime, or the fact that the information about the crimes, even something as basic as which crimes are occurring in which areas, is available to the public. Most of the information that I get is anecdotal from neighbors when I happen to be in my yard and my neighbor says, oh yeah, by the way, my shed was broken into, and then you find out that another neighbor had vandalism on his or her car. So it's scattershot how I get the information. I became aware of the increase in crime primarily as a result of some posts on the Nextdoor app, which then led me to a Facebook page called Rapid City Crime Watch, which mysteriously disappeared today. They had 5,600 followers as of this morning, and the person who was admin for that page used to summarize each week the crimes that occurred in Rapid City with a generic area in which those crimes occurred, and I was pretty shocked at the number of crimes, of all variety of crimes. I don't think we, as residents and citizens of Rapid City, should have to rely on social media to find out what's going on with crime. I think that you know, it would be much more preferable for me and others to get the information from you, city officials, Rapid City Police Department, Pennington County Sheriff, than just to rely on basically social media, which is a rumor mill. I've tried getting information from local news media, Rapid City Journal, KOTA, KEVN, News Center 1, and it's kind of hit or miss what they report on, and generally it's way after the fact. And I guess basically I just like to get a general idea of what's happening where. I was also read, and I don't know how reliable it is, that Rapid City law enforcement radio frequency changed, so the scanner's no longer available for public access. And I can understand that there are possibly confidentiality reasons for that, and that law enforcement needs to maintain control over that because of ongoing investigations. I have law enforcement members in my family, my daughter and son-in-law, so I do respect and understand that perspective. But sometimes I feel like residents are being kept in the dark about what's happening. I retired 3 years ago from the Air Force as a civilian. I never had military service, but I will tell you that situational awareness was drummed into me at every briefing. Basically, being aware of your surroundings, being aware of what's going on, helps keep me as an individual safer and us as a community collectively safer. So I'm asking you, as elected and appointed public officials, possibly to develop a plan to monitor crime and keep us informed, perhaps even something as simple as starting with information from each ward representative as to the number of patrols in your areas. And I see that I'm out of time, and I want to thank you very much.
Of course, thank you, Carolyn. Next up, consent items 2 through 37. We're going to open public comment for these. I don't have any. That's for 36. Would any of my colleagues like to pull any items from consent? The chair will pull item 26 at the request of the Finance Department. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Jones, second by Evans, to approve the consent items 2 through 34 with the exception of 26. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? They're approved. Item 26, approve resolution number 2022-080, a resolution levying assessment for abatement of nuisances. We're going to defer to Tracy Davis.
We received a payment on one of those items on that assessment roll, so we would like it removed. I did set a copy in front of all of you before the meeting. RelTalk is the name of the company that paid. So
would entertain a motion to approve with the exception of the one Tracy asked to have removed. Motion by Nordstrom, second by Roberts. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? An item passes. End of consent items. So non-consent items 35 through 37A. We're going to open public comment for these items, and we do have one speaker for this section. Gene Kesloff.
Thank you. My name is Jean Kesloff. My husband and I live in a historic house in the West Boulevard Historic District. It was built in 1910. It is part of Rapid City's history. The city made a commitment to the people of Rapid City when the two historic districts were formed, and it has been a struggle to keep that commitment ever since. It has not been for lack of trying. Previous commissions, historic preservation commissions, worked and worked to get a statement on the seller's disclosure document so that when the house was sold to the buyer would know that the house was in a historic district. And lack of support, this went nowhere. In 2013, a National Trust attorney was hired to write design guidelines for our historic districts, a packet that could be given out to new property buyers in the district. Much time and energy and money was spent working on those guidelines, and they went nowhere. So here we are again before you with another contributing structure potentially lost. I believe in the last 2 years there will be a total of 3 lost homes in this area, same area. Sioux Falls has 7, and I will say it again, 7 historic districts, and we can't seem to maintain 2. Sioux Falls, as you can see by the Argus Leader article that I gave each of you, knows the struggle in preserving historic districts. They send mailers to each historic property owner, hold educational sessions, invite property owners to attend historic preservation board meetings to learn more about the responsibilities and the benefits of owning a house in a historic district. I'm not sure when our Historic Preservation Commission meets anymore. Maybe we can learn something from Sioux Falls, because clearly what we have been doing here is not working. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, item 35, second reading of ordinance number 6553, an ordinance amending the code to prohibit alcohol sales in medical cannabis establishments and to allow flexibility on the commencement of operations for medical cannabis establishments. The recommendation is to approve. Motion by Jones, second by Solomon. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 36, approve request by Jacob Franz for determination by the City Council that there are no feasible and prudent alternatives to the proposed project in a historic district located at 1021 Kansas City Street, and that the proposal contains all possible planning to minimize harm to the historic property pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 1-19A-11-.1 and Rapid City Municipal Code 17.54.080. Recommendation is to approve, and we'll go to Mr. Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can call on Sarah Hansel to give us a short presentation on this, because I'm sorry to surprise you a little bit here at the last minute. I've been gone out of town, so I need a little bit of a refresher on this, and then I've got a couple of comments on it if we have time. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Sarah Hansel with the Planning Projects Division. I'm the staff liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission as well. This is a project that's occurred. It's already underway at 1021 Kansas City Street. This is a contributing structure in the West Boulevard Historic District, constructed 1913. The contractor who's working on this house began work without a permit from the city. So along with that, there was no historic review that they submitted. They completed the project about 75–80%. It is nearly complete, and then they were notified that they needed to have a permit, and so they immediately stopped and came to the city to fill out the necessary paperwork and go through the process. The Historic Preservation Commission reviewed the project. They evaluated, what was being undertaken, and they discussed the effects that it has to the structure. And they agreed with what the State Historic Preservation Office determined, which was that this is an adverse effect to the historic structure because it doesn't meet the strict standards of the Secretary of the Interior. And so in this situation, the Preservation Commission is commenting on this project after it's already begun. The value of the role that they have for our community is really lost at that point because the work has already started. And so this is not a project that they would recommend doing. If the owner had come in with the application before they began the work, they certainly would have made different recommendations, and they were clear about that in their minutes that they provided to you for comment. They're not, they wouldn't recommend this as a course of action, but in discussing with the property owner the work that had already occurred, acknowledging that it is nearly complete. So they discussed the project at length, and ultimately, because of state law and because of our ordinance, it is up to the City Council to make a final determination as to whether they will issue a permit for a project in this situation.
Thank you, Ms. Hansel. I just want to express my frustration as well, that this project was started, and I'm explaining this to the rest of the council members, that something needs to be changed in the process on this. I'm not sure exactly what that amounts to, but when a property in a historic district is up for renovation of some kind, some way, somehow, they've got to notify us that they're doing some kind of work to, in this case here, some exterior work, and they did not do that. And because they were so far along the line of getting the work accomplished, I believe you referred to it as about 80% of the job was complete. At that time, roughly 80% of the job was complete. We were kind of chained up to the progress that was in place, and it would be a greater expense for the homeowner. And I don't know if it was the homeowner's fault or it was the contractor's fault, but there's some frustration on my part that this project went this far, and it should have never gotten that far. And we're not blaming anybody, but it's just that a course of one of those things that got past us some way, somehow, and we need to find a way to make that turn around, so we get awareness out to the public, or they need to notify us. Something needs to be done, because this is totally inappropriate. And I've got just 1 minute left, so if you have any additional comments or corrections that you want to do, please, then I'll yield. Thank you.
Ms. Armstrong?
Thank you. Ms. Hansel, to address Ms. Keslov's question, when does the Historic Preservation Committee meet?
Thank you. They typically meet on the second and fourth Wednesdays of each month. That will change month to month depending on what work they have going on and whether they need to have a session or not. So from time to time, those are canceled or moved around, but we do post all of our agendas on our website before the meeting, so that there's public notice to the public about when the meeting is occurring or if it happens to be canceled.
And at what time and where?
We also meet over Zoom, like the Sustainability Committee, many times. And so we meet digitally, usually, and the link is provided online on our website.
Great. And then one more thing. How do we prevent this happening again? On one hand, this is a person's home, but how do we be proactive rather than reactive? I think I heard Director Fisher at one time say something, it's better to ask forgiveness than for permission, something like that. I heard her say that one time. How do we be proactive on this and let potential buyers know that if and when they buy a structure in this area, there will be some hoops to jump through?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a good question. It's a question we ask ourselves continually. We can always do a better job on our community engagement and outreach, and we are working on that. As our department works to get fully staffed, we're looking forward to having more resources to commit to the Historic Preservation Program. It's very important to us, and so mailers, workshops, these are all things that we have on our work list. A lot of people do know that they own historic homes, and so even though there is the occasional owner that doesn't, or they don't tell their contractor, I would say that is the exception and not the rule. Most people realize, and actually I wasn't able to attend the Legal Finance Committee meeting last week, so thank you to our director who gave a wonderful overview of the project. She's correct. Most of these that come through, people don't realize they need a permit. In this particular situation, they actually had a program or application prepared. They never submitted it. There was a miscommunication amongst the owner and the contractor. So for this particular decision, this application, they know they're a historic property, and the owner attempted to do the proper course of action. The ball got dropped at the contractor level. So,
well, if there's anything that Mr. Roseland and I can do, considering this is our ward, please feel to involve us. And I will, may I direct a question to Ms. Fisher?
Absolutely.
Since I mentioned your name, is there anything that you would like to add to the discussion, please?
Mr. Chair.
Of course.
If I might, what really reducing the problem and turning this around all starts with education. I think a lot of people just don't know. If they've lived in other homes in other communities or other homes in our community, they do exterior work to their structures. They don't realize what needs a building permit and what doesn't. There will always be those that will ask for forgiveness instead of permission because they know that's going to be an easier road for them. If financially they can put in some fabricated material that doesn't meet historic review but yet fits within the budget, and it does replace substandard materials, it to them is prolonging the life of the structure in their view, but at the same time we're losing the integrity and the charm of the historic structure. And if any of you looked at what was out there with the 3 to 4 inch reveal versus the 7 inch that's there today, it is significant, the difference that it makes the structure look. So how do we get to education? Well, that starts with the Historic Preservation Committee. I think Jean made a wonderful point tonight about the attempt that it was to have this disclosed at every closing, in every property, in every historic district, and that failed. But that doesn't mean that we can't continue to reach out to the real estate agents. They have many meetings throughout the year. We get invited to attend and do an educational session with them. We haven't had this agenda on as a topic for a while, and certainly we need to bring it back forward. As Sarah said, we are looking at expanding her division, and in doing so, we will bring someone on board that will be more proactive. We've also reached out to code enforcement, who are in the streets looking, and so partnering with them so that if they see some work that's being done on the exterior of a structure in the historic district, we're having communication back with building services to see, do they have a permit? Can we shut them down earlier? Can we turn this around at an earlier date?
Thank you both. I'll yield my time.
Mr. Evans?
I just need a little review, so another question from Ms. Fisher. This was caught because after the fact, they should have had a building permit in the first place, but one wasn't granted, and so it was caught later. How did it happen that they came in late for a permit in the first place, rather than just get it done because somebody noticed and turned them in?
That is correct. We received a complaint that work was being done and it was having an impact on a historic structure. We've yet to issue the necessary permit because until council takes action tonight, we don't have the authority to do that.
Okay. Well, it's unfortunate these things keep happening, and as you know, I'm really, really in favor of preservation and everything, but we have to be a little bit realistic in that, in many cases, the preservation efforts, a lot of time is spent on incidental things that really don't have a huge impact, and I think somehow we need to revamp this committee so it does have significant impact on the community. For instance, a few years ago when the school moved out of this building and moved into the Rushmore Mutual building down by the Y, the best mid-century interior in this city was demolished, and it was a gorgeous interior. Nobody complained about that. There was no advocacy to save that. The same thing is happening right now as we're all looking around, and the wrecking ball is going to hit the Sioux Sanitarium old building, which is going to have a huge impact on the city in terms of view and changing of landmark and whatnot. We're not getting a lot of support in getting that stopped, although some of us are still trying really hard, and we think it can still happen. So I don't know why we can't inform, if this committee really wants to accomplish something, maybe part of their task could be informing the homeowners in this district once a year or twice a year with a mailing, a mass mailing from the city, that you are in a historical home, and remember that at any time this is going to be needing approval from the correct sources. And I think that would be a proactive way to maybe stop this from happening in the future. If you've got a list of the, the structures, we could do that. But I also think we need to expand the purpose and the authority of this particular board, because Rapid City is an architecturally impoverished community for a city of its size. You can find a lot more good buildings in Aberdeen and Pierre and Huron. I'm not in particular Huron, than we have in Rapid City, and we should cherish every one we have that's really good. But we're constantly seeing school buildings, with windows half boarded up to save some energy and everything, really changing the design and the design integrity of the structure. And you don't see this in all communities. You don't see that in the Denver Public Schools. You don't see that in the Minneapolis Public Schools. You don't see that in the Casper Public Schools. The architecture is respected, and the people that control the money, make sure it happens appropriately, so that at the end of the day, in 50 years, you still have something of value. But it's like if you have a Mercedes and every time you get a little nick in it, you replace it with a Ford bumper or something, you're not going to have much. You should keep the integrity of the structure, and we should make that a community cause. And we should start working with the schools. We should start working with businesses to make sure that we have that in mind all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roseland.
Yeah, to follow up on Mr. Evans' talk, Rapid City is very short on historic property. Seems like we're a smaller town, but we're the second largest town in South Dakota, but we have a very small historic districts with downtown district and the West Boulevard district. And we should, but what we have is tremendous property. We have beautiful buildings and West Boulevard neighborhood district, who is very historic, many different types of homes and different values of homes that anybody could live there. And nobody feels out of place because it's a neighborhood. And slowly but surely, one house at a time, things are being destroyed. And it may be lack of forethought, it may be just because they don't care or they don't know, but it's happening. And we can't allow that to happen. And I just kind of wonder what no feasible and prudent alternatives means. Does that mean, well, we tried something and it didn't work and it's not going to work, so that we're going to rely on those words? I don't like that. It's used too many times and with really no basis. And so I feel like that doesn't really sum up the fact where we're at. And I'd like to say a question for you, Sarah. What would happen if the council voted no on this agenda item? What would happen?
Thank you. If the council voted no, as Director Fisher noted, we would not be able to issue a permit for this work that's occurring. And that would, the owner of the property would be required to disclose that they conducted work without a city permit on a future sale of the property. Because they would be in violation of the city code, the attorney's office, in partnership with other departments, could also file criminal civil suits against the owner as well, and there could be fines levied. The contractor, the building official could take action against their license or keep track of that if there were a repeat offender. That's something that's come up in the past for repeat offenders is, if this contractor keeps doing this, perhaps their license is revoked. So there are a few options there of what might happen if the item isn't approved. What I should also mention is the property owner could make a different decision. They could potentially take off the siding that was already, now granted there's no historic siding left, but they take off the new siding and put on a different product is a potential outcome if they'd be willing to do that. I don't know that they would, but some different options there.
Thank you much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you very much. Question for Sarah Hansel, if I may?
Of course.
Thank you. Sarah, thank you for being here tonight. Was it stated somewhere along here in the discussion tonight that it was the contractor that failed to get the license or the homeowner that didn't have the contractor get the license? Has that been determined yet?
Mr. Chair, it's the first thing you said, Mr. Jones. The owner submitted an application to the contractor to turn into the city. It was not turned in before the work began. Okay. And we hear often about work being done all over Rapid City and licenses, building permits not being purchased by contractors or whoever. So I was going to ask if there was any kind of a fine process or anything in place, when that happens, not, historic or not, that's, the contractors need to purchase the building permits and that needs to be done properly. We have so many good ones in town. It's a shame that a few, may tarnish the reputation of others. And then, so answer that if you would, and then if I have time, I'll jump in again. Thank you. Yes, the Preservation Commission had the same concern, and they asked if the building official would levy a double fine against the contractor for not going through the correct procedure.
And I certainly don't want any names mentioned at this point, but to your knowledge, is this a contractor that has demonstrated this kind of behavior before in Rapid City?
It is not. In fact, they were highly responsive. They felt absolutely terrible and wanted to do the right professional thing and come through the process and do it correctly. That is their intent.
Thank you. So it shows there's a whole lot of elements to this this situation. It's not certainly black and white. When I was on the city council in Lead, there were some people who believed that every building in town was historic just because it was old, and old doesn't necessarily mean historic. And so it's a fine line, and the bottom line, it seemed to me, was the financial burden placed on the homeowner to have to do it in, you know, proper historic manner. Is there money available for these folks? If we as the city and others are going to put this kind of pressure on them to do this kind of work on their homes, I struggle to be a person sitting up here and say, do this to your home because we said so, but you have to pay for it yourself. Are there funds available to help people do that?
There are not. There are grants and various programs for commercial properties. The city does not offer a program. The State Historic Preservation Office has a tax moratorium for contributing properties, so that's a tax break you can apply for on certain occasions. But at the local level, no, we do not have funds.
And so that complicates it even more. How far can we push, and what can our expectation be as a government entity to put pressure on people to do this? I agree with Mr. Roseland. I was born here, grew up here. West Boulevard is one of the most charming areas in Rapid City. Beautiful area, and we do have very few areas like that. So nobody likes to see it dissolve. But there's an awful lot of layers to this onion, and I think we need to tread carefully in, you know, putting this kind of pressure on homeowners that are very expensive. I don't know if that's an issue with these homeowners or not, but there's just so many elements to this. I don't know what the right thing to do is at this point, because it impacts a lot of people, hurts feelings perhaps, and takes us down a road we don't want to go down. So I don't know. I sure need some good guidance on this one. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Chair.
Of course, Mr. Evans, for 1 minute.
Well, Mr. Jones, you brought up a really, really significant point about the funding of this, and perhaps we're figuring out ways to use TIFs to fund other things. Perhaps we can use a tax credit for these people over a number of years that they can be reimbursed for these efforts to make their house historically correct. And maybe we need to investigate such a thing. But I think your point is really, really well taken. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have a motion on the item. Motion by Roberts to approve, second by Solomon. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Can we do a roll call vote, Angie?
Jones. Aye. Lehman.
Aye.
Solomon. Aye. Evans. Aye. Roseland. Aye. Nordstrom.
No.
Ham. Aye. Roberts. Aye. Stroman. Aye. Armstrong. Motion carries 7-3.
Thank you. Next item 37, approve the following list of 2023 alcohol beverage license renewals, which have been vetted and approved by the RCPD and the Rapid City Fire Department. Motion by Jones to approve. Second by Evans. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. 37A, authorize staff to advertise for bids for 2 Dodge Durangos and 3 used vehicles for the police department. Estimated cost is $188,448. Move to approve by Jones. Second by Nordstrom. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next up is public hearing items 38 through 42. Open public comment. Closed public comment. 38 through 41, alcohol licenses. Consent public hearing items 38 through 41. My colleagues like to pull anything? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Roberts, second by Ham. All in favor? Any opposed? And item 42, approve resolution 2022-081, a request by Indigo Design LLC for Youth Soccer Infrastructure LLC to create tax increment financing district, and approve resolution 2022-082 to add a project plan for property generally described as being located north of Seeger Drive, south of Country Road, west of North Elkville Road, and east of Dias Avenue. Motion to approve by Jones, second by Roberts, and we have Mr. Nordstrom in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to have a little more time to study this issue over. I've been out of town this last week, and there's a lot of information that I haven't had a chance to review, so I kindly request a continuance of about approximately 2 weeks, whatever the next time frame works out to be. Because there is some things that I've got some additional information about, I need to learn a little bit more about, but I kindly ask for a continuance of 2 weeks.
You can make a substitute motion of that nature, Mr. Nordstrom. Otherwise, we have a motion on the floor to approve.
If you'll recognize that as a substitute motion.
Mr. Nordstrom makes a substitute motion to move the item 2 weeks.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Stroman. Mr. Solomon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do think it would be great to have our planning department just give a brief overview of the project. They did at Legal and Finance, but I do think for the sake of the entire council and the public, it would be good for us to know the details of what we're voting on. So,
Mr. Chair, if I might, I'll defer to Sarah. She will give a far more detailed, brief presentation than I did, even though I did get it in with plenty of time for everyone to talk.
you did a great job,
Thank
but
you.
I think it would be great to hear from Sarah. Thank you.
Throw Sarah curveball nights, holy cow.
She knows. She's ready. Look at this presentation.
The screen in front of you is a map of the proposed district. It's about 617 acres in size, and it's located north of Seeger Drive, south of Country Road, west of Elkvale Road, and east of Dias Avenue. Of note, the property is developed with the Dakota Field Soccer Complex over here. There's a lot of land zone agriculture to be developed in the future, and as well as some industrial properties. This is a master plan that the developer submitted with their application showing future development along North Elkville Road, including commercial, some employment or industrial uses west along future Boone Boulevard, and potentially a mix of residential uses. We will continue to work with the applicant on the development of this property. The city's future land use plan shows this area primarily as an industrial and parks and greenway conservation area, but there is some flexibility in our future land use plan depending on the proposal, so that's something we'll continue to work with the developer on through the rezoning process. And the infrastructure with this proposed tax increment district, it primarily consists of a trunk sewer main. So they're proposing to extend it in 2 phases. The first phase will go from Seeger Drive north to the soccer fields here. The sewer capacity of this facility at present is accommodated through holding tanks that are known to become overused during busy times such as tournaments. And so connecting to the city sewer service would really help them with the function of that facility. So that's phase 1. And then phase 2 is to extend a trunk sewer main west along this future Boone Boulevard to serve this property to be developed. In addition to the infrastructure, in-the-ground infrastructure itself, they're also proposing to include the professional fees, contingency, and financing that would be associated with getting this infrastructure in the ground. Just to give you kind of an indication of where this property is located, this is North Elkville Road. So this is about where the current trunk sewer main of the city currently ends, and so they would extend it north here up to the soccer field. And then looking, here we are at the soccer field complex, looking back the other direction down North Elkville Road. And then phase 2 here, the trunk sewer main would that's not exact, but generally through this area to serve this development. The total cost of the project is about $6.2 million over phase 1 and phase 2. You can see the itemization of the proposed costs on the screen. And the anticipated base valuation of this project, so what is the value of the land today before these improvements and before this proposed development occurs? It's about $17 million, so that's where we're starting with our base. And the project is expected to pay off in 19 years, at which point the estimated future value is just under $40 million. This is a chart that we talk about with a lot of TIFs, just kind of showing how they pay off. You've seen this graphic many times recently, so I'll skip this one unless you have any questions. That's one place to cap the overview. I can go into more details if there are specific questions.
Well, in my 1 minute left, Sarah, approximately how many homes are we looking to add in the development? Do you know that?
You know, I could put the conceptual master plan back on the screen. The level of detail really for this master plan probably will change, so I wouldn't really be comfortable indicating, you know, how many homes there would be. I think the commercial development along North Elkville Road and along this area really is the primary driver of what would help the TIF pay off, along with the current development that already has valuation increases.
The TIF committee approved this.
They did recommend approval, yes.
Any concerns or questions regarding this development?
They vetted this project quite thoroughly and discussed a lot of different issues related to the location of the sewer main, and they talked about the pro forma, but at the end of the meeting, overall did recommend to approve.
Okay. And it might be helpful to hear from the actual developers as well if we have further questions, but I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Chair.
Solomon. Ms. Arms, Ms. Fisher? go
While
ahead.
we have Sarah up here, would it be okay if she just continued on with the end of those slides, which I think the developer is going to want to speak to in just a moment? It speaks to how are we capturing the value to pay off this TIF. Most TIFs, it's the project that you're looking at that they want to build that captures the cost. That's not the case with this TIF. Sarah, if you could run through those slides real quick, because extending this into 2023 potentially, or we're getting pretty close to it, might be a problem with them based on how Director of Equalization is capturing value of land.
There's a handful of projects within the boundary that have already been constructed. And so, for example, the Wausau Supply Company has about $5 million in added valuation that's already slated to be added value going to the county and to the taxing entities. So they would capture that $5 million in valuation, and that would help to pay back the sewer trunk main. In addition, the UPS facility similarly has already been constructed and it created about $5.6 million in added valuation, and there too would go immediately to help, pay back this TIF district, as opposed to waiting for this other, conceptual development that they show on their site plan. There was two pro formas submitted with this application. The original one showed a negative 5% without the TIF and 45% return on investment with the TIF. Following the Planning Commission meeting, they revised the numbers by looking at the land value a little bit differently, and are showing a negative 24% loss without the TIF and a 4.93% return with the TIF. And then this next series of slides will just go through the various criteria in the TIF policy and the cities and the state statutes. So I won't go through those in detail unless you'd like me to.
Thank you, Sarah. Laura, you're in the queue. Go ahead.
I have a question for Mr. Estes, if that's okay. There's a motion on the floor to postpone this for 2 weeks. By delaying it for 2 weeks, will this negatively impact this project?
Good evening. I'm Doyle Estes. I'm the landowner. My wife and I are the landowners of this property. I did receive a text from Laura asking about a 2-week delay. My concern is this: there's a lot of development going on now, and the reason we put this forward now is we want to capture the real estate taxes of the property that's already being developed. And if we delay this very long, we're going to miss that opportunity. Dane Boomsman and I put this together for the city to consider so that we can capture the real estate taxes for about $10 million of the property that's being developed now. If we delay this, we run the risk of losing that and lose the opportunity to bring city sewer to the soccer field with the city paying nothing. Our proposed tax increment district covers the city's share that the city would otherwise pay if it was a developer doing this project.
So 2 weeks would negatively impact?
Excuse me?
2 weeks would negatively impact this?
I don't know. She was the one that figured out that we had more time than I anticipated. I thought we had to have the thing put in place by October. If 2 weeks is not going to cause a problem, but I'm scared that we're going to lose this opportunity to get free sewer to the soccer fields.
Right. And I only have a few minutes, so I don't mean to keep interrupting you. I just wanted to make sure that it would not blow this project out of the water. I believe everybody wants to see this project happen, but I respect the fact that Mr. Nordstrom needs a little more time, and frankly, I do too. I do have some questions, and I prefer to talk in person rather through text messages, so I don't think anybody's trying to create obstacles for this project. I just think considering the money and the time, the staff, I just think it would just be a more conservative approach so everybody understands this project. There's a lot of layers to this, and the opportunity is there, and I just want to just make sure that 2 weeks won't break this deal.
May I offer 2 more comments?
Sure.
2 things. I have asked 2 of the folks that are with the city, with the soccer association to come tonight, and I'd just as soon them not have to come back again in 2 weeks, so I would like the city to have an opportunity to listen to them and why they think this is important. And then number 2, one of you folks up there asked about what we see for housing out there. The current plan that we have for both this west side of the Elkvale and the 120 acres we have on the east side, our current master plan has laid out for approximately 400 new homes out here and approximately 700 apartments, in addition to an area for commercial, both along the west side and the east side of Elkvale and on the south side of Country Road, right above the, right on the north side of the soccer field. So if we can get the city sewer up there, this area is going to explode. We will have opportunity for 1,100 houses and apartments up there, which the city has quite a demand for area for housing now, and we're trying to help work that problem.
And I thank you for that. And again, we're not trying to impede it. I want to understand it, and before I make a decision, I want to be fully educated, fully informed, and at this point, I'm not quite comfortable. I just have more questions. So again, Mr. Nordstrom, thank you for proposing this. I'll yield what little time I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Mr. Stroman?
Thank you, Chair. And I'd also like to express that I sat on the TIF committee, and Doyle, thank you for doing me the courtesy of trying to contact me before that meeting to educate me a little bit. I didn't have time to do it, and I regret that now. But I do think this is a very impressive project, and I do think it's something that is needed. I do, however, still have some questions, and I do want to work with you on this. I think it's to the benefit of all of us, but I would like to have a little bit more time to discuss it with you or with some other people. I guess, one of the things that concerns me is the center line of Elkvale Road is the standard location for the sewer main. An exception has not been requested to place the sewer main along the west side of Elkvale Road, and I'm just concerned. I want to vet a little bit. This is a little bit irregular, I think, to have the sewer line where I understand it's proposed to be, and I would just like to have some time to work through that with you or whoever, and see if the city can do something also to help this come to fruition. I think that road, and I think you've also indicated that in the future that road would probably need to be widened to handle the additional traffic. I think the road right now is probably in a state where it could stand to be widened and improved now, and I just want to know if there's some way we can do this where that gets done now rather than tearing everything up in a couple years and starting over again. That's the reason I just want a couple weeks, Doyle.
I do have the solution for the road getting improved, and if you look at the budget, we're stretched to the max. We're at a 19-year payback now, so tearing up the road to put the sewer in the middle of the road doesn't make economic sense. But I do have the plan to provide funding to make the 3-lane road up there, Greg. So, and I'm glad to meet with any of you privately or small groups and explain what we have in mind. So, thank you. Any other questions for me?
Mr. Roberts, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And there's been some great questions up here. And, Greg, the reason that they haven't asked for that variance is you cannot ask for that variance until you bring in your project plan. So, I think you want to come up here, Dane? Maybe you can explain some of this a little bit better than I can. But from my understanding, right at the moment, That sewer line would be in the west side of the road, so you don't have to tear the road up. And there's not enough in the TIF at the moment to pay for the road.
So Dane Boomsma, working with Doyle Estes on the project. What we're asking for tonight is simply the TID approval, which is the district, as well as a budget. We've phased this as phase 1 and phase 2 because there are a lot of factors that are not presented or even been resolved at this point. If, for example, we have to go into Elkville Road, it's going to be a lot more costly than possibly granting easements on the west side of the road. These are all possibilities. The phase 2 may never ever come to fruition. We simply have a budget of $6 million, and if we go in the road, I can almost assure you that it will eat up the entire $6 million and there won't be additional sewer. It may make more sense when we do investigating that it may make sense to have the easement on the west side of the road. But again, we haven't proposed that one way or the other exactly what to do. Simply we want the district approved with a budget. Now it's in our hands again to go back and go through design phase, work with city staff to get comments before we ever come back in front of you for any development or any piece of pipe goes in the ground.
Thank you very much. And you know, another thing, if you look back historically on all the TIFs and TID districts that we have approved and how many of them have actually went to fruition, it's, Sarah, can you tell me, do you know that right off the top of your head? I would guess it's probably 25% have actually went forward and 75% have never actually happened.
I don't have that number off the top of my head. It would not be, I would not have integrity if I tried to make it up on the spot. But there are several projects that don't get off the ground or launch. Over the last 10 years, I'd say most of them have launched.
Yes, but before that, we had a tremendous amount of them. I know that.
I'd agree.
One of the things that we need to do, I think, tonight, I think we should do it tonight, is I think that we should vote on this just so we get this TID district in place, because the TID district is what freezes those property taxes. And then everything else that we're talking about, we can discuss in the project plan going in the future. But we need to get that TID district in place, because if we don't get it in place, they could lose the $10 million in taxes. And if that happens, the project's pretty much down the toilet. So, you know, we're taking advantage of what is already out there. We're taking advantage of this huge growth we had in the last couple of years. Now it's kind of slowing down. Even if nothing happens on your end with what's coming in right now, this sewer line will be paid for. So if we don't take advantage of it right at this moment or as soon as possible, you know, and I find it kind of interesting that, no offense, Richie, you need 2 weeks. I go on vacation quite often. I've never asked for any time to be able to look into something further. I mean, we have the time to look at stuff. If you're on vacation, the internet's a big thing anymore. You can get on it and see anything from anywhere. So I think it's important that we actually vote on this tonight and get this TID district in place. If the TIF doesn't go forward in the future, it doesn't go forward in the future. But at least we didn't lose the opportunity. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Mr. Evans?
Well, I think Mr. Nordstrom was actually at a sort of a city-sponsored thing, not on vacation. But I have a question, if we could use Mr. Tech's expertise, because I believe that Mr. Stroman brought up some very important things, but he could maybe put us at ease on this vote. Do you find that this location of this sewer main is out of the ordinary? Is it something that you would be concerned about?
Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
Thank you. Well, that's a very difficult question to answer at this point in time, because there has been little or no engineering actually done on this project. It's all conceptual. Certainly not having the sewer in the center line of the road is a non-standard location. We know there are a lot of other utilities and conflicts out there, so finding the right location is going to be challenging, but we don't know today what that means.
But you could probably work with the developer to make sure that this is not an obstacle toward appropriate development in the future. Is that correct if we do this?
It'll depend on what the engineering analysis shows. So it's too early for me to make any sort of indication thumbs up, thumbs down as to what they're proposing, if it can be successful or not.
Well, I'm tending toward what Mr. Roberts says, that we should strike while the iron is hot, and then the devil is in the details for later. We have to make sure we follow through on the details. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Ham?
Given this scenario and what we've learned so far, it seems to me that we're not going to learn more in the next 2 weeks that'll give us insight as to whether we are going to vote yea or nay on the next step. So my concern would be waiting and not knowing any more in 2 weeks. So I would say I'm in favor of moving forward with this TID.
Thank you, Mr. Ham. Mr. Nordstrom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to explain that I was at the National League of Cities and collecting a lot of information, so there may be some potential there for assisting us. I'm not guaranteeing it, that we have some assistance coming from the information I'm gleaning from that. So with this discussion that took place here tonight, I was totally confused about what we were trying to get accomplished tonight. And that's why I asked for the delay. And if it's just getting us to just developing the district, I can be okay with that. But I wanted to learn more about some of the questions that have already been asked here by colleagues about the sanitary sewer line, what's going to happen with the road. If that happens in a later discussion, then I can work with that. But there is some other information that I need as well if we're going to go beyond, if we are going to go beyond the TID district. So that's why I needed that information. So if this discussion tonight clarified for me that we're just establishing the district, I can settle for that. But I'm going to refrain from any other comments about where I was at and what I was doing, because I felt that those comments were totally inappropriate. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. And now I can fully support this project going forward.
Mr. Nordstrom, would you like to revoke your motion, your
if I
substitute
may.
motion?
Yeah,
Okay.
if I may.
So we're back to the original motion to approve. However, without objection, I would like to reopen the public hearing comments to let the two gentlemen speak. I didn't get their forms until after we started the item. Start with Mr. Sharp.
Yes, good evening. My name's Dave Sharp, and I'm the executive director of the Black Hills Rapids Soccer Club. Ward Solomon came out to our last tournament, so thanks for coming out and seeing, firsthand the size that we've grown to. With 180 teams at our last tournament, we just had thousands and thousands of people coming in and out of that, of the soccer complex over the weekend. And on the weekends, it's very similar because, we have almost 1,000 kids in our rec program at any one time. And so the weekends are just extremely busy there. We do training there all week as well, but on these tournament weekends, our septic tanks fill up in a day. So we have 2 septic tanks there, and we have to have them pumped daily, and that's a big challenge. If they're late, which they were 2 years ago, they actually backed up into our concession stands, and we had to shut down the concessions. We had raw sewage on the floor in there. So, and we're to the point now where we're maxing out the capacity of those fields that we have with the 12 fields there. We're going to have to expand at some point here, and I mean, people just love coming here. They love the complex. The soccer complex is absolutely gorgeous, and that's why they keep coming back. Many of the people that come here actually stay for 5-6 days so they can, be a tourist as well. But this thing can keep growing, and it's going to keep expanding, and putting public sewer in there would be a massive help to that.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Weitzel.
I'm Kurt Weitzel. Thank you for listening to me tonight, council members and chairman. I've been involved in soccer since my 34-year-old kid was 4, so last 30 years. But, you know, I've been kind of on a little bit of a break. But as a coach and a fundraiser and a person that has been involved for so many years, I would just say that, you know, this is, when the soccer complex was originally approved by City Council, it sat dormant for 7 years. And there was a fellow that came through the organization and says, hey, we're gonna get after this. And so he put out an email to everybody, and I was the only one who responded. And so the initial time that we got together was him and I, and then we started strategizing, and luckily we teamed up with a bunch of really good guys within the Live Hospitality Group and got things really rolling, and we raised $2 million and got the city behind us for anybody who needs a history lesson. It was a big undertaking, but I worked on it for over 5 years. And during that time period, it was one of those things that, you know, people kept saying, well, you know, is it really going to be successful? You know, and we struggled with that because obviously it was a new thing. It was in a different location. People give us a hard time about it, but at the same time, I mean, it's turned out to be phenomenal. And, you know, I got kids that are old enough now that they coach, and, you know, they've been out there coaching kids, and it's pretty amazing to me to just see that, you know, the things that we're doing and making a legacy is pretty substantial. So with 180 teams using outhouses and, you know, needing sewer out there, I think it's something that we really need to get behind, and we can make a big difference. And I just am excited to see where this will go and how it will go together. So hope you can find it in your heart to do it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. So we're going to reclose the public hearing comment period, and we're going to vote on the motion on the floor, which is to approve item 42. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 43, the bills list. Tracy?
There are no changes to the bill list, so the amount is $12,968,378.37.
Motion by Solomon to approve, second by Jones. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion to adjourn by Nordstrom, second by Evans. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And we are adjourned.